Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today at this live event, and calling it a live event is really particular to what I want to talk about, because at a live event, anything is possible, right? We don't know what's going to happen in 10 seconds. In fact, when I was 6 years old, I walked out onto a stage and I saw the audience and I wanted to get as close to them as I could, and I walked all the way up to the edge and I fell off of the end of the stage. Fell off right into the crowd, and everybody panicked and wondered what was going to happen. In fact, I could get as close as that to you and fall off the stage right now, and it would be an amazing shared event. In fact, it would be a painful event for me, but for you guys at the next break, you would say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Brook Hall fell off the end of the stage. I know, can you believe that? And maybe in 6 months down the way, you'll see your friend and you'll say, remember that day we went to that event and that guy, Brook Hall, he fell off of the end of the stage. What I want to say is that this experience, the fact that you're here, that I'm speaking to you live, that we're having this interaction, it's a unique thing. It brings us together. It's always brought us together. In fact, back in 700 BC, when the Greeks used theater, that's what they used it for. They used it to bring society together. They built these amazing arenas, they built these amazing amphitheaters, and they said, let's get society together. Let's get us all together. Let's celebrate the things that make us Greek. Let's celebrate our stories, our myths. Let's talk about how great we are as Greeks. And it worked. And in fact, it not only worked for the Greeks, all cultures, we could say now, have some kind of a performing arts tradition, where usually we get together and we celebrate the things that we share. Those things that bring us together as a cultural group. Right? We celebrate our stories, we celebrate the values that we hold as a society, we celebrate our needs, we celebrate our woes, we celebrate those stories that we can all identify with. We bring the tribe together. Well, what if not only can we use this interaction, which we'll now call theater, what if we could not only use this interaction to bring our own together, but what if we could use it as a bridge to bring two tribes together? Or maybe not only two tribes, but multiple tribes together. What if we could maybe find those people who dress differently than us, that speak a different language from us, that have a different belief system, and we say, you know what? We're not as different as we think we are. Maybe we can share something through this experience. So we can use all of those things, all of those unique aspects of theater that bring us together. We can bridge the gap between cultures. Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, one thing I want to talk about, give you an example of how story, and theater is made up and uses the idea of story, how story can transcend borders. Because I do want to say that now borders are falling, and now more than ever, we need to have ways to understand one another. We turn on the news and we see that we're having problems doing that. We're seeing that borders are falling, and we're in spaces that we didn't know we were going to be in, and we meet people that didn't know they were going to be in our space, and we have to have a way to deal with that. We have to have more empathetic understanding in order to get together as a multi-global society, as a global, multicultural society. So I want to bring up this one example that shows how story transcends borders that I think you might find interesting. So I want to take you to Tsarist Russia in the late 1800s, and there's a writer, and his name is Shalom Aleichem. And Shalom Aleichem writes a story about a Russian Jewish milkman, the dairyman Tevye, and his daughters. And he writes a series of stories, and many years go by from the late 1800s, and then in the USA, some people see this collection of stories, and they say, this would be a great musical theater play. And it's one you may have heard of, maybe not. It's called Fiddler on the Roof. Fiddler on the Roof, it's not about fiddlers, and it's not about rooftops. Fiddler on the Roof is about tradition. They use that idea of a fiddler on the roof to talk about the tradition and how easy it is to fall. How easy it is to break tradition, especially when we're in a multi-generational conflict, when the younger generation wants to do things their way and the older generation believes that doing things their way holds society together. Anyway, it's a timeless story. In fact, it's such a timeless story that on today, this very day, you could stand in the middle of Times Square and buy a ticket and see Fiddler on the Roof, because it's playing on Broadway tonight. It was written over 50 years ago, and it has been done again and again and again and again, and it's playing tonight. Not only is it a timeless story, however, it's also a borderless story, because the story has been translated into languages and done and produced around the world. Now, I bet you can't guess where, other than the USA, Fiddler on the Roof has been produced more than any other country. Japan. Japan. Why? Well, if you think about it, it's a patriarchal society. It's dealing with its own struggles between generations about forced marriage versus the younger generation thinking they want to marry whoever they choose. Right? A lot of the themes are universal. In fact, the very first Japanese producer in 1967, he went to the writers and he said, "We cannot believe this is a story made in the USA because it's," and I quote, "so Japanese." That's amazing. Let's unpack that for a minute. So we start with a story in late 1800s Russia, which gets transferred over many years to the USA, made into a musical, which is now played almost more than any other country in Japan and influences a whole society. That's pretty amazing. That's just story. So that's the power of script and story, but I also want to talk a little bit more about what makes theater theater. I want to talk about how we gather, right? So we all come together as society and we say, this is the place, this is the theater. And in Greek times, they called it the festival, as opposed to the athletic competition. So we all gather for the festival, and we all come in, and like the athletic competition, we're all there to join as a group, as a society. Maybe we dress in a certain way, and we have a ritual. But this is where the comparison with athletics and athletic events ends. Sporting events, it ends. Why? Because when we go to sporting events, when we go into that arena, we go into that coliseum, we are pumped up. We are ready to cheer on our team. We are ready to cheer on our athlete, our Olympian. We go in with full opinions, not willing to change. How many times have you gone to a sporting event and halfway through your friend says, "The other team is playing really well. I think I'm going to root for the other side"? We don't do that. We don't do that. We come in with opinions, and they're not usually going to change. In fact, several theoreticians looked at this, and they said, the difference between the athletic event and the festival is that at the festival, we leave our competition, our inclination for competition at the door. We come in with an open mind. We come in ready, it's not imperative, but we come in ready to have our mind changed. Maybe. It's still a group. We still gather as a group, and it's still healthy for our society to gather as a group. But just maybe, we're going to change our mind. That's pretty interesting. In fact, physiologically, our brains do the same thing. They did studies in 2007 that showed when you see a story and you're interested in the story, that your brain releases extra levels of the hormone oxytocin. Oxytocin, conversely, in other research has been shown to make the viewer more empathetic to what it is they're watching. So let's unpack that a little bit. Just being interested in a story, more oxytocin, a heightened possibility for empathy. That's pretty amazing. Aristotle had a word for this, called it catharsis. He didn't have studies, but basically kind of came to understand that some artistic events could erase all of our previous fears, all of our self-pity, all of our negative emotions, and we could emerge from an artistic event renewed, have a catharsis. And there is the potential for us to have a catharsis when we're in this interaction. In fact, this interaction, I think, is so special, and I alluded to it at the very beginning about falling off the stage, because it's a one-time thing. We say it's ephemeral. It's only going to happen once, and it's only going to happen this way. And there's an increased tension because you are there and I'm here, and we're reacting to one another. And if we could draw it, there's energy that I'm sending out to you, and you're sending energy to me. And maybe we don't talk about it that much, but it definitely exists. In fact, when asked about why he did theater, Sir Patrick Stewart, the renowned British actor, he said, "Because I love the fact that for 2 hours, I get to share the same air as the audience." We are sharing something, whether we know it or not. You're giving me energy, and I'm giving you energy, because it's a live event. And it's only happening once. One of my most favorite memories of being on stage, ironically, it's about Fiddler on the Roof, although it has nothing to do with the very first story. Fiddler on the Roof, in the middle of the show, there's a wedding. And the original director, choreographer, Jerome Robbins, came up with a brilliant scene in that, a dance in that wedding scene. It's called the bottle dance. Some of you may have seen it before. What happens is everybody's drinking wine, they're having a great time, they're at the wedding, and then suddenly they put the wine glasses down, and one person starts and he puts a bottle on top of his head. And they're all wearing flat-topped, wide-brimmed hats. Still in Russia, 1800s Russia, right? And so they have these special hats, so the curvature of the head doesn't make it impossible, but it's still very difficult because they balance a bottle on top of the hat. And 8 or 10 or 12 dancers all come forward, and they all get in a line, all with bottles on top of their heads and with their hands up, and they're connected hand to hand. And it's an incredibly difficult moment as a performer, because not only do you have to keep the bottle from falling off your head, but your adjustments can't be too big, because then, like a domino effect, you'll knock the person next to you off balance. So it's very tense. It's a very tense moment. And you're trying to adjust, and it starts out very slow, and you're moving very slowly, and it increases in difficulty, and pretty soon we're all turning, and then we start going under the arms of each other, and there's a big climax. We all go down to the knees, and we slide along the knees, and the music is really dramatic. And now, if the bottle falls, there's a conceit built in for that, because what you're supposed to do is pick up the bottle and walk over to the side of the stage and watch the rest of it from the side. But if you keep the bottle on your head to the end, there's a long sustained note in the orchestra, you give the bottle to the rabbi, and then you're allowed to dance the ecstasy section. And then you go into the ecstasy section, and it's whipping the arms, and you have this big celebration, and you think, I made it tonight. And the audience is leaning forward, and you can feel the tension. And they know, they can see the bottle moving side to side. It's very simple, but that tension is palpable. It's real. Now, some nights, the bottle falls off. And that's actually a great experience, not for the performer, but it's a great experience because then you know, the audience knows, it's not a gimmick. It's actually a challenge, right? It's like the net is under the tightrope walker, and the first time the tightrope walker falls, we go, oh my gosh, it's dangerous out there. The same idea. There is a tension to it. Some nights, everybody keeps the bottle on their heads, and people think it's a gimmick. It can't be real. It's glued on, Velcro, right? Taped on. But whatever it is, this interaction that we have is incredibly important, because I believe that the energy you send me and the energy that I send you back means something. If you've ever talked to performers who do the same show night after night after night, they'll say something like, last night the audience was lousy. Tonight they're great. And what they're saying is that this energy transfer was really positive. I had a really positive energy transfer with you tonight. Last night, not so much. We as performers are trained to not let your response affect what it is we're supposed to do. That's the idea. Although I can tell you from experience that's really hard, because if you're not laughing where everybody else has laughed every other night, it starts to affect me. And I have to really try hard not to give you lower energy, because lower energy is only going to make your show worse. And there's a real feedback loop that happens here. And I suggest that this heightened tension, this makes everything else that we talked about, the capacity for empathy, the capacity for catharsis, the capacity for gathering together, it makes it all possible and it heightens it. In fact, if we can say that theater is a unique place where we can come together as one tribe, we can celebrate the things that we share, we can have a capacity to have our minds changed, to see stories that have some kind of impact on us. Well, isn't that the perfect opportunity to sit next to somebody from a different culture, from somewhere different than where we're from, who speaks a different language, dresses a different way, has a different belief system? I think it is. Unfortunately, I think we miss this opportunity a lot. I've been in Taiwan for 15 years. I go to Taiwanese theater all the time. I've been amazed the fact that local producers, they don't make a lot of effort to reach foreigners. They don't. And I think that the thinking goes, it's in Chinese and they're just not going to understand. Conversely, they're not entirely to blame because most of my foreign friends think the same thing. Well, I know that there's theater going on, but I don't think I want to go because my Chinese is probably not good enough. I want to take the opportunity to remind you that researchers have found that the language in an interpersonal communication, that accounts for 7% of the meaning. There's 93%, which is nonverbal and contextual. And I suggest that there still is value in going to a show, even if you don't understand the language. Whether that's in Taiwan, whether that's in Italy, whether that's in Argentina, anywhere. Because I think that at this time, when we really need increased global understanding, when we need to get together and understand one another, then can't we use theater as a way to understand that we can work together, that we can coexist, and that maybe, just maybe, we can solve some of our bigger problems? I think we can. Thank you for your time.